Okay, I think we'll get going. The seminar is recorded anyway. If anyone misses any part of it, I will be able to access a recording, which we will upload to YouTube. Okay, so let me share my screen. So this is the workshop number 6, or the 6th seminar in the Cultural Tourism Recovery Sharing Best Practices seminar series. We started the seminars in August this year, so it has been quite a marathon of seminars that we organized and led in different countries in the region. And in this particular seminar, what we are going to do is just discuss about some of the preliminary outcomes of the seminar and what we have achieved. And also we want to hear your views and opinions on what kind of collaborations and how they can continue in the future. Okay. So first, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I am based and from which we are streaming this workshop. I am on the Irukandji people land of northern beaches of Cairns. We also have 2 other Aboriginal people living in Cairns. It's Gimui Wulabara Yidinji people and Jabogai people. So I would like to pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge their valuable contribution to James Cook University and to the community. I would like to also pay my respects to any Indigenous people presented in our seminar. Okay. The agenda for today is that we will start with the opening speech from our Professor Sigi Gudergan, who is Associate Dean of Research, and he will give us some of the opening remarks. Then we will proceed with the summary of the outcomes of the project, what has been done. I will present evaluation of the seminar series. Then we will talk more specifically about the activities and outcomes of the project in different countries. So based on the seminars we undertook over there, Associate Professor Hera Krediana will talk about Indonesia. I will speak about the seminar we did in Cairns in Australia. Associate Professor Hassan Al-Bagul will talk about Malaysia, and then Dr. Jenny Panchal will talk about Philippines. And we will conclude today's seminar with a discussion on way forward, some of the things we are planning to do. And also we want to hear from the participants on what they would like to see happening in the future in relationship to cultural tourism and collaborations with James Cook University in Southeast Asia. Okay, so that's the introduction from me, and now I would like to invite Professor Ziggy Gudergan to give his opening remarks. I'm sorry, you are muted, Ziggy.
Okay, I think you should be able to hear me now. And so thank you all for having me again today. And I'm really delighted to open the 6th workshop of the Cultural Tourism Recovery Project. And I think what I've been hearing, and I've listened in earlier workshops, is quite interesting in that there's a real desire to transform, to move forward, to create change. And I think that's hopefully an outcome of this workshop. As Dennis mentioned, I'm the Associate Dean Research of the College of Business Law and Governance at James Cook University. And in my role, I also have a very keen professional interest in seeing tourism become sustainable. But personally, I too have a very keen interest in cultural and sustainable tourism, particularly in Southeast Asia, where I've been traveling for many, many years myself, and where I've been going on dive holidays and experiencing various cultures in places like the Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, to name just a few locations. But importantly, James Cook University's College of Business, Law and Governance, it's also very much aligned with what the project is about. I think what we're about is creating a brighter future for life in the tropics and beyond. And in this particular context, through tourism education and tourism research that makes a difference locally and globally. So we as a university and college really aim to make a difference in the Asian region through what we do, and I'm immensely pleased to be part of the Cultural Tourism Recovery Project. And obviously, I will allude to a few points, but Dennis probably will discuss many other points about potential collaborations and so forth. But as you've been discussing in the previous 5 workshops, there are many challenges, but also huge opportunities to ensure cultural tourism can become more sustainable, in particular after the devastating impacts of COVID-19. And I will not go into all those details because on the one hand, you all know them much better than I do, but there will be also part of the remainder of today's workshop. What I believe is really important, on which will be continue being an element which will need to be emphasized, is unpacking customer or tourism experiences, and also understanding within that context the role of digital media throughout the overall journey, from creating awareness and interest all the way to the actual cultural tourism experiences and thereafter. I think those will be crucial aspects and they're relevant. We look at the use of augmented and virtual reality in complementing or supplementing experiences and conveying understanding about potential experiences and creating awareness, understanding. I think there's a big opportunity. And while the costs of creating such digital aspects become less, there's obviously still a real need to develop competencies to create such supporting digital experiences and media. But within the same context as what I've mentioned before, I think it's really important to create entrepreneurial mindsets, understanding to reimagine cultural tourism experiences. And I think while much of what we have been doing over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years will continue being relevant and will be important, I think the way we do things will need to be refined in minor ways, sometimes in more drastic ways. And I think having open mindsets to facilitate change and being willing to transform, I think it's important. And I think that's important because experiences in cultural tourism are co-created. It's the tourist, the traveler, the visitor, but it's the operators, it's the destination, governments, other contexts that really make a difference in how such experiences are co-created. And a good example, which many or all of you would be aware of, and which I encountered earlier this year, is in July, or I think it was in July or very early August, the East Nusa Tenggara government had announced to increase the fee to access 2 of the main islands of the Komodo National Park to see Indonesia's Komodo dragons. The increase was 18 times the original fee level, and it increased to 3.75 million rupiah, which is about $260 US, to enter those islands of the Komodo National Park to see Komodo dragons. Clearly, this increase in fee will likely scare off tourists and will have huge impacts on the impact of those living on cultural tourism in the area, which may actually dry up to some extent, in particular with some proposals about who might be operating certain kind of tourism facilities in that area or national park. So I think the impact is likely huge. And what, as many of you would be aware, hundreds of Indonesian tourism workers have gone on strike over this hefty increase. And while the government suggests that the increases in sea levels are needed to preserve the habitat of Komodo dragons, no doubt in my mind will have a huge impact on cultural tourism operators in the area. And how to deal with this is amongst the many challenges that you are talking about throughout your workshops. And I think obviously the government took some initial action, and I haven't heard about latest actions, but at least what has happened is the fee increase had been postponed to only take effect January 1, 2023, which means domestic tourists will be, until the end of December, only charged 75,000 rupees, and international tourists 150,000 rupiahs. So, but once those fee levels increase, there will be huge implications. And I think with this in mind, what we are certainly very keen to explore, both within our tourism group, within JCU, James Cook University in Australia, but also Singapore, is to work with tourism associations, bodies, governments, operators within Australia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and other parts, Papua New Guinea, so forth, to really find ways of how we can help and what kind of assistance we can provide, where we can make a difference and help. Obviously, within the Philippines, within Indonesia, Malaysia, and elsewhere, there's great capacity already. Sometimes capacity is limited because it's just not enough people. Other times it's certain competencies that are stronger in some areas than in other areas. And so I think we have a very keen interest in finding ways of working with many of you to find and identify opportunities where we can work with you and hopefully making a difference. So with this in mind, I will hand it over to you because you're all the experts. So thank you again for having me take some of your time. And I really think that's a fabulous project. And I hope that you collectively will identify some really interesting avenues to move forward that ultimately will make a real difference. So beyond having workshops, to really start working out how you as a collective group can start actually taking on ownership of some of those initiatives to work with various governments, operators, to make small or big steps towards change. So thank you, and I hope this will be a really, really fruitful workshop today.
Thank you so much, Sigi. Very good topics and themes you mentioned that, yeah, some of them we covered in our workshops, and yeah, hopefully we can identify more specific projects based on what we have heard in these seminars to do a more applied research and longer term collaboration. Of course, it has been difficult, as when we were writing the proposal, it was just we were just emerging from COVID. In most countries in Southeast Asia, it was still impossible to travel internationally until early middle of this year. So now the situation is getting better, and we can do more applied things rather than discussions. So thank you so much. And let me share my screen again so that we know where we are moving on in the program. So we'll go straight into our summary and preliminary outcomes of the project, the main part of today's seminar. And first, I wanted to get back to the origins of this project, how it originated, why, and what we have been doing. So it all started a year and a half ago, around July 2021. And um, we have good connections with Southeast Asia. Dr. Jenny Panchal is originally from the Philippines, and Dr. Herak Tadiana is originally from Indonesia. And also we have a lot of friends in the region. One of them is Dr. Hassan Al Bagul in Malaysia and Kota Kinabalu. And so we started discussing what can we do together. And we identified that cultural tourism is a really important part of Asia Pacific tourism experience. It has such a rich and diverse culture, or many cultures, hundreds. There's so many different ethnicities, different languages, different religions, different histories. And in many cases, a lot of cultural tourism operators, small businesses, and of course, from the news, you all have heard how in different countries people came across the similar struggles during COVID-19 pandemic, when there was no international tourists and the domestic travel was also limited. And one of the issues has been for the region that cultural tourism has been over-reliant on international visitation rather than the domestic. And so we thought that as there has been discussion on how to build back a better, more sustainable tourism, as Professor Sigi Kudergan mentioned, we thought, well, what could be our small contribution that can be impactful? And we thought it could be about cultural tourism and how to bring it back stronger after COVID-19. There are important things about cultural tourism that make it valuable to focus. One of them is that it involves young people and women. And in many cases, especially young people, are important in ensuring that culture continues, it doesn't die out. So how can we keep attracting young people to be involved in culture, learn about it? And one avenue for it is cultural tourism. Another point is that cultural tourism is often delivered in regional areas, not in the capital cities. Capital cities are doing okay just with the business tourism, with the conferences and conventions. But we need to spread the economic benefits of tourism into the regions. Of course, there is nature-based tourism with a focus on the natural resources and the environments. But another important part in what tourists often remember after their trips are the people and their cultures. So we thought from the perspective of regional development, it's also a good topic to focus on. And of course, there is value in the culture itself, right? Both tangible and intangible cultural heritage that needs to be protected and needs to be uh, um, taught to others. It brings a cross-cultural understanding between people. It creates bridges that are important as we live in a globalized world, to be able to understand each other. And so that was our focus. And we are very lucky that the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in the Australian federal government has a series of councils that provide grants for people-to-people collaborative projects. One of them is Australia-ASEAN Council that focuses on Southeast Asia, but there are also similar programs related to India, to Japan, to Latin America, and several other places. So the program is designed to work for both academic institutions, but also other organizations, associations of different kind, industry organizations, or non-profits, and is basically promoting those links between people and providing opportunities for collaboration between Australia and different regions of the world. As recently was posted on their Facebook page, so Australia-ASEAN Council board has met, and they discussed deepening engagement with Southeast Asia. Specifically, they said that they are considering a range of exciting opportunities to build connections through leadership and community-based programs, collaborative research, and showcasing the diversity of Australia's talent. So we can see that the Australian government's interest in the region continues, and that there for sure will be more opportunities for us to collaborate as we see opportunities are coming from the federal government. Okay. So we're very happy for Australian government to have funded our seminar series. And more specifically, our objectives have been to develop capacity of cultural tourism initiatives involved in tourism in ASEAN countries, to report on case studies and detail potential strategies for cultural community-based tourism initiatives in the region, and establishing linkages between tertiary education institutions and tourism organizations in Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Australia. So our project focused on these 4 countries: Australia, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. But it doesn't mean that in the future we cannot work with other countries. Very interesting things are happening in Vietnam, in Thailand, of course. So we can think about other projects and other partners in the future. As I mentioned, when we started the project, it basically started with JCU and the University Malaysia Sabah collaboration. And as we progressed, more organizations have joined us, and we are very grateful for their contribution and the efforts that they put towards delivering the seminars, creating the content, participating actively in these seminars, organizing field trips, and so forth. So in Indonesia, we are very grateful for the support we got from Hildikti, which is the association of higher education institutions in tourism in Indonesia. Steep Ram in Yogyakarta that hosted our seminar in Indonesia, and Trisakti School of Tourism, which has been providing ongoing support, including some of the administrative support for our projects. And then in Malaysia, of course, our very good partners, University Malaysia Sabah, have been really good partners with us for the whole duration of the project, and they have delivered the seminar in Kota Kinabalu. And in Philippines, Winaka Ecocultural Village has been a supporter from the industry perspective from the beginning. And they also welcomed us on a field trip in the Philippines, in Baguio City, north of Manila, in Luzon Island. And also our academic partners, St. Louis University and University of the Cordilleras, both located in Baguio City in the Philippines. So it has been, an organically growing project, and I'm quite happy with how it turned out, to be honest. To be more specific about what we have done, so there were 5 seminars that took place already, and this is the 6th, the final one. So we started with an introductory seminar first. It was online, but we also included some industry speakers to share how they have survived through the COVID-19 period. Then we moved on to the topic of women and youth in cultural tourism. That was the focus of the workshop in Indonesia, in Yogyakarta. So we especially heard a lot of different stories on how to engage with young people to bring in them to cultural tourism and the importance that women play in cultural tourism. We then moved on to the third seminar that took place in Cairns in Australia. And here we had quite a strong emphasis on Aboriginal tourism. In Cairns, that is the way our cultural tourism works, because Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in the region have inhabited this land for millennia, and so their rich cultures are the backbone of cultural tourism here. And I will talk more in detail about this, but we focused this workshop on regenerative tourism, the concept of giving back more from tourism than it takes. Then we moved on to a very important topic in cultural tourism, marketing, because as I mentioned, many of the cultural tourism operators are small operators. They have limited opportunity to market themselves, especially to the international tourists, but as well to the domestic tourists. As there is a growth in tourism products, the competition becomes very stiff, and it's important to think about how you can reach your target markets. And only 2 weeks ago, we had our fifth seminar, and that seminar was in the Philippines, in Baguio City, and focused on adaptation and economic diversification. This topic we thought was important because we don't want people to think tourism is a panacea for all the problems. And tourism is quite a vulnerable economic sector, as we saw with COVID-19, but before with any natural disasters or any epidemics or financial crisis. You can't only rely on tourism. So what else can communities do? What kind of different opportunities, economic opportunities they can create to complement traditional economic activities like agriculture and tourism? And so today we're doing our final seminar in the series, and the focus on just reporting what we have done and achieved, and discuss the future. Okay. So as I mentioned, the seminars were taking place both online and in a hybrid mode. The first and the last seminars are online only. But the second one took place in Yogyakarta in Indonesia. The third one was in Cairns, Australia. Fourth one was in Kota Kinabalu, Malaysia. And the fifth one was in Baguio in Philippines. So it's quite an extensive geography. And it was great that people with different perspectives from different countries have met and spoke and shared their experiences. This sharing experiences and practices is what stimulated us to set up this workshop series. We may think, okay, as academics, we have some knowledge, but it also is very valuable to hear what has been happening in other countries, other places in the region from the practitioners, and hear what government, non-profit organizations have been doing to support cultural tourism, and gain lessons from that. Okay. So we have been doing some analysis of the engagement with our workshops. Overall, we had over 1,200 registrations for the previous 5 seminars. The majority, 2/3, were female. And you can see that there is quite a spread in both the age and the geographical location of where people come from. Some were from Denpasar, from Bali. We have people from different regions uh, um, from the Philippines as well. Some are from the mountain province, someone around the Cordilleras. There have been some people from Manila as well, from the capital. Similar in Indonesia, there has been interest from Jakarta as well. And similarly, Cairns and Townsville have been involved. You can see that there's quite a lot of young people that got involved. They're mostly students, but this quite similar breakdown between the 25 to 34, 35 to 44, and 45 to 54 age range. So it has attracted a lot of different people with different backgrounds. Also from different countries. Philippines have been very supportive, but also Indonesia, Malaysia, and we had over 80 people from other countries on which we are not focusing in our seminars. So there is a broader interest in the topic. You can see India, Sri Lanka, Iran, China, Oman, Canada, and so forth. So it has been interesting for us because we were not really marketing it to those cohorts, that people still found our seminars and got engaged with them. If we look at the sectors where the participants come from, the highest number was from the tertiary or higher education providers, and I will break it down later on without students as well, but also very good response from the government, and they're from different levels of government. It could be state or the local government. Especially for local government, it's been quite important to reinstate tourism and other economic opportunities in communities after COVID. And it's local government's responsibility to ensure their direct constituents are recovering from both the health and the economic issues that COVID-19 brought to us. And we also had good support from the private businesses, almost 80 registrations as well. If we take students out of the equation, there's still around 1,000 registrations. And then we can see that, again, quite a large number of registrations come from a diverse age group. And it doesn't really affect where the registrations were coming from in terms of the geography, and similar with the gender. So whether you include or exclude the students, as they actually were not our target market for this exercise, we were thinking more about the practitioners and government representatives. They don't really affect the distribution that much. Okay, and of course, as we are from the university, it's also very pleasing to see the engagement with our colleagues in other countries from other universities in the region that we can see on the graph here. But there are other types of professions that have been involved. A lot of administration staff from the government who are tourism officers or tourism facilitators in the in the city, community, or the state. There are also managers that have joined these programs as well. Okay. We also have been doing an evaluation of our seminars to see how well they are received by the respondents. We gathered about 360 responses to our evaluations. There will be another one after this seminar, so also please fill it out. And we can see that the evaluations have been quite positive. If you see on the graph here, the majority of the participants viewed positively the seminars. They had clear purpose for them. They found them relevant to the work they had, that they were engaging, and overall they're satisfied with the seminars. Unfortunately, we haven't yet looked closer into these results to see those that were dissatisfied with the seminars, what issues they may have raised, and what we could do better in the future. But that's part of our scheduled activities as we finish the seminar series. We also looked at the different topics that we covered and what our participants have found important in these seminars. So among the important themes was, of course, the recovery of the COVID-19 and its impacts on the sector. Focus on the cultural heritage protection, where in some of the locations we have discussed there is not sufficient protection of the existing cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible. But in our discussions, we felt that the protection of intangible heritage was more important, as it is intangible, right? It's the performances, it's the skills people have, it's the knowledge. Once it's lost, you cannot recover it. The built heritage, you can renovate, you can build new buildings, but once the knowledge is lost, you can't recover it. So it's a challenging topic to preserve the intangible heritage. You know, the songs, the languages, the traditions, the understanding of the symbols behind rituals or artifacts of paintings, statues, and so forth. Authenticity is also an important topic that has been covered, and we have been discussing what is authentic or what is not. How do we make sure that we can create cultural tourism products that are attractive to tourists without creating a Disneyfied artificial culture? One of the problems, for example, is that tourists have limited time to enjoy cultural performances. But usually performances last for a very long time, and tourists want just short performance that is the most exciting. So those elements that are exciting become overemphasized, and the young people learn about them because they're performing them in to tourists. But then the less exciting elements, which may not be less valuable, maybe they are more valuable, are not as widely portrayed or performed as before. And so the authenticity losses because of that. Domestic tourism is also something we have focused on. As I mentioned, until early to middle 2022, there were very few international visitors coming to countries in Southeast Asia. It has been improving. I've been one of them in the Philippines, so I can tell you that things are getting better in that case. But the COVID-19 brought the realization that you cannot just focus on international visitors. Cultural tourism also has a lot of value as um, a way to learn about your own culture, and the stimulation of domestic cultural tourism is very important. However, traditionally there has been less of interest from domestic visitors in the cultures, because the perception, and it's the same whichever country you go to, is that, oh, I know about my culture, why do I need to pay money to learn something about my culture? I know it already. but it's not the case. Usually there's always something new to learn about it. Okay? And then we focused also in relation to that, the value of culture, how to promote the importance of the local or national culture to the residents. And as I mentioned already, we focused also on youth and women, especially attracting young people into cultural tourism has been an ongoing topic in many seminars beyond the one that was focusing on that issue. Social media marketing has come up in several seminars as well. How do you reach your target market, especially when you are on a tight budget? Well, now it's getting more difficult, but it was not so difficult to reach a wide audience with the Facebook promotions. But some algorithms seem to be changing, and also the market is changing. So the practitioners have to engage in all sort of new media, including TikTok, for example. Product development, also an important topic on how do you develop products, and this is where the sharing between the participants has been beneficial. Just showing here's what we do and here's what people do in other countries, and learning from each other. Social and environmental impacts were covered as well, especially we talked about it in the regenerative tourism seminar, and government support as well. Okay. We also asked what support is needed to develop cultural tourism further. One of the issues was the lack of experience. Some of the organizations only beginning now after COVID-19 finding the opportunity to develop cultural tourism in their community, diversion from the traditional economic activities. And so that is why these kind of programs are important, especially when there is funding, then there is no barrier for people to participate, to attend these workshops, don't need to pay extra to gain valuable knowledge and education. Poor internet, something is very programmatic, but is very important, especially in terms of markets. You can't get access to markets if you don't have internet. And this is how people book their travel, how they find out about where to go and what to see. And the lack of access to markets is related to that, but also to limitations on where the organizations are located, how easy it is to access them. Language barrier is an ongoing issue, similar to financial support. And we learned of some of the initiatives from different governments of how they are supporting cultural tourism, what their programs are. That was also discussed in Indonesia and in Malaysia. In Indonesia, we heard from the tourism officer from the state ministry. In Malaysia was from the local government. In Philippines was also from different levels of government. We heard what kind of support mechanisms they provide. Access to knowledge is an issue, and this is something that we are trying to address. More formal education and training. And the last point here is awareness raising, and that is especially important for the local residents in the countries where we undertook our seminars, raising awareness among the different stakeholders, especially the residents, of the value of culture and value of cultural tourism. So you don't only need to market to the outsiders, but also need to market to your own people. Okay. So that's the part from me about what we have been doing, what we have achieved so far in brief summary. And now I would like to ask my colleagues to also cover what has occurred specifically in each country. And we'll start with Indonesia. So Dr. Heraktadiana, please, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Dennis, and thank you everybody for attending this the conclusion of the webinar series. This is the 6th one, and welcome everybody to this webinar. Hello, Jenny and Hassanal, and also Prof. Sigi. So I would like to provide some brief report about what happened in Indonesia, the activities that was conducted in August. Maybe Dennis, can you scroll down? Yeah, I think this one is just a brief information about the participants that involved in the webinar. For the first webinar, there were 244 participants. And you can see also that this event was also captured by the media. And the photo over there was the visit to the tourism village in Langgeran in Yogyakarta. And then you can see that participants really enjoyed the visit to Langgeran tourism village, because Langgeran is one of the best tourism village in Indonesia, has been receiving various awards nationally and internationally. And the latest one is from the UNWTO. Okay, next year. So these are the outcomes of activities from the Indonesia's event. The first one, to summarize, is there is the need to have a strong support from tourism stakeholders to promote cultural tourism and heritage. So during the discussion, it was mentioned that tourism needs the synergy from various stakeholders. The synergy of pentahelix, like the business, academics, community, government, and the media, because government can facilitate the events or the programs, but of course the government cannot work on their own. They need support from all the stakeholders related. And then another issue at the time is to develop community awareness about the importance of preserving culture and heritage. It is very important to make the socialization to the community about the culture and heritage. They need to be aware, they need to understand, to know about their own culture. If they already know about their own culture, then they will get interest. After they build the interest about culture and heritage, then they will be more caring about preserving cultural and heritage. So this was one of the point was addressed by some speakers, because when we talk about preserving culture and heritage without telling them that why it is important, I think they will not understand, and they will not probably not really interested to take action. And then it is also necessary to encourage the youth and community to create and participate in the cultural events. And then from the discussion in the webinar, it was indicated that the government also provided some, some funding to develop the cultural events. Maybe the fundings are not 100%. Some of the fundings are just partial fundings, but the funding is to encourage people to develop the events, and then they can generate more fundings from, let's say, from the sponsorship or from the admission fee. And then one of the speakers at that time also mentioned about, as the educators, what we can do to encourage the students, because the students is the next generation. And then what we need to do as the academia to empower the student, and then to support the students to get interested in the cultural events and to participate in the cultural events, and also to create, not only to participate, and also to create some events. And it was also noted that we need to provide more opportunities and access for women and youth in tourism activities. Actually, there are a lot of opportunities for women to participate in the tourism activities, and then it can be done in various ways. And I remember at the time the Princess of Yogyakarta, the Bendoro, it was very interesting when she mentioned about how they actually train the dancers at the palace. So the dancers have the like a certificate about the dancing, and then they can actually pass on their skills and knowledge to the young generation. So it's not only just they perform dancing in the palace, but they also given a certificate and a skill, and then they can actually teach the young generation about the traditional dancing, which is to preserve the culture. And I think it's also one of the very great initiative from the Yogyakarta Palace. And I also remember at that time, there's one of the speakers also mentioned about reducing the carbon footprints through the cultural tourism or tourism village, because when we develop the cultural tourism or the tourism village, the people or the local community will plant the like the vegetables or the plantation, and then they make the food or they cook the food from their own garden or from their own farm, and then they will serve and deliver to the guests, instead of, let's say, the guests going to the restaurant, in the 5-star restaurants, in the hotels, or the international restaurants, where the food maybe come from the suppliers from different countries, from different cities or even different countries, and then it will increasing the carbon footprints. So to reduce and to eliminate the carbon footprints is to encourage the local community to provide everything local, and then package the local products or services, and then deliver it to the customers. All right, thank you, Dennis. And then next, please. Yeah, and then we learned from the case study from the Langran Tourism Village in Yogyakarta, the roles of women in transforming the communities to tourism. So you can see over there the some of the photos, a couple of photos about women producing a chocolate. So Langran is actually quite well known for the cacao or the chocolate, the chocolate plantation. But the problem was at that time it wasn't managed properly, and so the price of the chocolate were not really having a high value. So the community started to develop the chocolate as a product of Langran. And you can see over there that the women, the local women in the Langran Tourism Village, they created the chocolate products. And I heard that the chocolate is actually quite nice, and then it's very nicely packaging as well. And they even have like a chocolate shop where visitors can go, and they can also learn about how they produce the chocolate. And I think it's very good because in here, actually the women in Langran Tourism Village have a very significant roles, and they actually increasing the economy of the Langran Tourism Village, and then also when you can see that probably you've heard a lot about the saying that even you educate a man, you educate a man, right? Or when you educate a man, you educate an individual. But when you educate a woman, you educate a generation. Or when you educate a woman, you educate a family. And this is true because you can see in the long run how the women take action, and then they even manage the homestay at the Langran Tourism Village. So they manage the homestay, they produce like local souvenirs and handicraft, chocolate. So they are actually helping the community, helping the Langran, the village, in terms of the economy. Okay, and then of course, when the economy is getting better, then the well-being of the local community is also increasing. Okay, and then in the webinar, Indonesia also actually encouraged the youth to involve in the tourism promotion and development, and these are some of the activities at that time. What actually promote the roles of the youth in tourism. For example, in Yogyakarta area, they have what they call Dimas and Diajeng Youth Tourism Ambassador. So this is like a selection of the youth to become the ambassador of tourism of Yogyakarta. And then there is also Saka Pariwisata, or the Tourism Youth Scout. So the Scout is not only the, of course, all of you know the Scout, right? But this one is Saka Pariwisata is a Scout, but focusing on the tourism activities. And another one is Genpi. Genpi is Generasi Pesona Indonesia, or Indonesian Charms Generation, and Gen WY, Wonderful Indonesia Generation. So these people, these youth, maybe most of them are millennials, Gen Z, and they are very high tech. They are very tech savvy, and they help the government, they help the community to promote Indonesia tourism on the social media. So these are some of the initiatives that was mentioned in the webinar about the youth involvement in tourism promotion and development. So Dennis, and then also the participants here, these are the some of the brief summary of what happened in Indonesia and all the activities that mentioned in Indonesia. And of course, hopefully from this one, we can generate like collaboration in the academic and also research, as mentioned by Dennis as well. And now I can give the floor back to Dennis. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you so much, Hera. Very good report. And so then the third workshop took place in Cairns in Australia on campus at James Cook University. And that's our photo. So the focus of that workshop was on regenerative tourism offerings. We focused on this aspect because Cairns and the surrounding tropical North Queensland region is very famously known for its natural resources. It's known for the Great Barrier Reef and for the wet tropics of Australia. Both are UNESCO World Heritage Sites. And so there is a natural synergy between the nature-based tourism and the cultural tourism in the region, because the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, as I mentioned, have been the custodians of this land for millennia, and they have a very good, outstanding knowledge of the nature. And also there are different unique cultures. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the seminar, just in Cairns, in a city of 150,000 people, we have 3 different Aboriginal nations living. And then you move 2 hours north from here, and there is another group, Kokoyilanji people, and so forth. So it's a lot of diversity. And we wanted to focus on the impacts of tourism. And so regenerative tourism has come now as one of the important new topics in tourism, moving on from sustainability. In terms of regenerative tourism, the way we understand it is sustainable tourism is to sustain the natural environment and the culture. So do no harm, basically. But what the focus is increasingly on is on regeneration. So creating better outcomes, greater benefits from tourism than they used to be. So for example, in terms of the natural environment, regenerative tourism would be restoring the wetlands or the mangroves. Yeah, maybe there used to be mangroves in the area a long time ago. Then for some reason they were lost from tourism. Maybe tourists and tour operators can restore those mangrove forests, and that would be an example of regenerative tourism. From the cultural point of view, maybe some cultures, maybe language was getting lost because there is interest from tourists. There is more emphasis on preserving that culture and teaching the language to young people, so the language is preserved. That's the regeneration in terms of culture. Okay, and so we had speakers from the state government. So Mr. Mali Ingram is the business development officer for indigenous tourism, and he was talking about the year of indigenous tourism in Queensland, which was in 2021. And the state government specifically provided funding for the development and marketing of indigenous tourism in Queensland. Quite a lot of projects took place here in North Queensland, as there's a lot of culture that has been preserved and can be developed into tourism products. And then we had also a panel discussion on how tourism can strengthen culture and nature. We had presenters from Minjil, which is a performance company. They do quite a lot of support in the uh, uh, events, conferences. They welcome to the country. They do performances to tourists as well. And so they were discussing about the importance of self-sustaining cultural tourism, not reliant on funding from someone else. You need to be able to sustain your operations, be independent and be entrepreneurial. Yeah, finding opportunities as not as only representative of a community, but also as an entrepreneur, as a business person. How do I ensure that I can create a product that will create the economic benefits, right? And the economic value leads to preservation of the culture and of the nature. Then Craig Cartlin from the Jabalbina Aboriginal Corporation talked about their initiatives. So the Jabalbina Aboriginal Corporation is the organization of Kuku Yulanji people. So they take the ownership and custodianship of Daintree Rainforest, which is an important national park here. And they want to ensure that the resource is protected, because that's where they live. And they are currently working on a cultural tourism hub as a center, a key node in cultural tourism in the region, where the information on tours can be disseminated, information about the culture of the local people, where the tour guides can be trained and then deliver guided walks or longer tours. So that's the current program that he talked about. And Marcus Brady is from Mandingalaba Ancient Indigenous Tours. It's one of the most recent additions to cultural tourism in Cairns. They only started operating after COVID-19, so they opened earlier this year. So we heard from their perspective of how they were developing tourism product. And since Marcus is more focused on marketing, he talked quite a lot about the connection to the market, how to make the trip exciting, and their tours are not cheap. So he also focused on trying to be quite bold and ensure that your standards are good, but you can also charge quite high prices for these unique experiences that are delivered. You know, the culture that can be experienced in a particular place cannot be experienced anywhere else. It's unique. So he urged not to sell cheap. But we also connected to some of the broader issues related to tourism and the ongoing vulnerabilities. So still quite unpredictable who can travel and where. For most of the countries in the region, Chinese market has been very important just before COVID, and they're still following the COVID zero COVID policy. Which means we don't have access to the Chinese market in the nearest future. Okay, we had a couple of activities also to get participants to think about how they can design tourism products that would be regenerative, what they can bring back to the community and the nature. And we also did a little exercise on more focused on the resources that I needed, the skills that I needed, the resources that are in place that can be converted into tourism products, and so forth. So that's the report from CANS. Now we will move on to Associate Professor Hassan Al Bagul to talk about Malaysia. Hassan Al, can you unmute yourself?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, all good.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you very much, Dennis, for that small introductions, and good morning from Malaysia. So I would like to report for our outcomes on what we have done as part of the big cultural tourism recovery. So we were assigned on the marketing part on the cultural tourism recovery. So it's something that we wanted to see with the before and after kind of scenarios. Well, one of the things that that I think let's just set up some scenario here first, because we invited people from in our locality to talk. So, but this is based on the tourism in Sabah, so which is prior to COVID, which is 70% are domestic tourists and 30% are international tourists. So a lot of the cultural tourism entities, they are depending really on domestic tourists rather than international tourists. Now, one of the things that that we found after all these presentations and discussions that we had, and a lot of the entities are very resilient to the COVID-19 or pandemic era because of that domestic, dependency, and also on the sizes as well. So a lot of the sizes of cultural tourism entities here are small. So when they are small, the resiliency are a bit higher than if you're a big one as well. And there's also a very good or active involvement in the by the local government. So this is again something that actually has been it's very good to see that it's happening, because the local government do give a lot of extensions of or a lot of what do you call that, a support while the pandemic is happening as well. And the way I see those things too, that in Sabah, that we have our own ecosystem where a lot of these different stakeholders like the local government or agencies or tour operators and travel agents, communities, and so on, they have champions. And the champions are very much very well connected with each other as well. So one of those things, actually, the ecosystem actually is not too big and it's not too small. It allows people to actually, in a way, support each other too. And especially in terms of sharing resources and mentoring each other in terms of, what do you call that, in terms of the operations. Another thing that that is actually quite interesting in terms of the marketing after the pandemic, it's a lot of a lot of people have to relearn who are their customer base are. So one of the things that they have to relearn is basically it's how to connect to their customer. So there is like a suggestion that in the cultural tourism, you have to have a very strong stories, or very interesting, or very you know, very is a story that can connect to your customer, so that they can identify themselves with you. So this is when you can maintain them as your customer as well. And then also there's a lot of emphasis on the process as well. This is when the sustainability comes in when you talk about the process, because I think a lot of the domestic tourists, especially after after this pandemic era, so they are looking into what they call that. They're looking into something more meaningful, like where it come from, where it, how is it made, what's the process going to be like, who is doing what, and things like that. I mean, for example, one of the people that we invited to what do you call it, to talk, basically doing crafts, but just again, but the people that she hired would be the single mother. So this was something again, kind of like telling the process. And I think again, a lot of people are more interested in knowing what the process are, so that actually, and also connects to the story too. And there's also that kind of needs to bring some comfort and trust back to the destinations, to the product, and also to the sites as well. And a lot of these things actually achieve in social media. And I think social media now actually probably has taken over a lot of the marketing outlet for a lot of people too. So this is again, the social media has actually been helping a lot in terms of connecting and maintaining a strong branding for everyone that actually involved in the cultural tourism. So I think that's what I got from the gist of that our sharing practices. Again, I think in the future, this is something that we also would like to have. For the languages, we have no problem with English. So for Malaysians, but I think because we have decided the seminar is always on Thursday. But again, the community that we are dealing with here, they are not basically full-time in the cultural tourism operations. So most of them actually are, that's a secondary job. So a lot of them actually are unable to kind of contribute or participated on the working days, because it's a lot of the operations are really on it's a secondary job, not on a primary job. So that is all from us in Malaysia. So that is me from NRF as well. Thank you very much, Dennis.
Thank you so much, Hassanal. Good points on the some of the issues with the logistics, basically. Yeah, it's always difficult to find a good time for everyone.
That's right.
And yeah, something to take into account in the future. Very good summary. I think one of the topics that we haven't mentioned before today, that you mentioned, was on storytelling. And yes, storytelling is really important. From the beginning, from the marketing, you need to explain why people should go there. What is the story behind it? And people connect to other people's stories much more than anything else. So how people's psychology works. Okay, now we'll move on to Dr. Jenny Panchal, who will tell us about the Philippines.
Thank you, Dennis. If I may just share my screen as well. Can you see my screen? Okay. How about now?
Yeah, now we can see it.
Yes, I'm afraid that I am unable to do a presentation mode. That's the best I can do just because I only have one screen at the moment. So I would have to make do with this one. So thank you very much for that introduction, and I am very honored and pleased to present to you the outcomes from the most recent workshop, which was held here in Baguio City, Philippines. This was held on the 17th of 18th of November. So that was just a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. So the workshop has been co-presented or co-organized with our partners here, including Winaka Ecocultural Village, St. Louis University, and the University of the Cordilleras. And without their help, we wouldn't be able to achieve our aims and in fact, exceed our attendees and event partners' expectations. So I will provide a more detailed acknowledgement at the end of this presentation. Right, so our workshop was very successful. Our speakers were mostly females, but they presented a diverse range of topics, including Director Nelly Nita Deliera from the Department of Trade and Industry, specifically from the Philippine Trade Training Center. And she talked about the role of government and how the PTTC, which is a government agency, aids or supports local communities in economic diversification whilst focusing on culture and promoting tourism at the same time. Our panel speakers were former Chief Operating Officer of the Tourism Promotions Board and former Regional Director of the Department of Tourism here in the Cordilleras, none other than Marie Vinustan. We also had former Undersecretary of the Department of Tourism Philippines and currently the President of the ASEAN Society Philippines, Ms. Alma Jimenez. And last but not the least, our very hardworking partner who's a co-owner and manager of Winaka Ecocultural Village. She sent her daughter on her behalf because she's currently in Canada, but I think in my opinion, her talk or her speech that Jamie has delivered was very empowering for a lot of our attendees, especially the weavers and those involved in tourism. The event was also graced by local politicians. In fact, the mayor has sent the Baguio City Tourism Officer, Engineer Alec Mapalo, who spoke on the mayor's behalf, and he did read a message from the mayor, who couldn't also attend because he had prior engagements. But one of the most, one of the most powerful speeches that I've heard from a local government official was that of Congressman Mark Go, because not only did he expound on culture and cultural tourism, the promotion, preservation of culture, but also he's spoken about the different projects that he and his team has done as a representative to the Congress of the Philippines and how it has benefited the local communities here in this region, particularly in the Blist area. I can't remember the entire thing. I can try. I think it's Baguio, La Trinidad, Itogon, Sagada, and something else, but that's a huge area covered considering the projects and the programs that Congressman Mark Go had and is still continuing at present. Well, we received some media attention prior to our event, which I think was really good. So Dr. Dennis Tolkash and I were featured in the Baguio Midland Career Lifestyle section. It was truly an honor to be able to share with the local community here. And Baguio Midland Career is widely read by the people of Baguio and the surrounding towns here in Benguet. It's one of the most prominent local broadsheets. It's printed weekly, but it's always good to be featured in this publication. So I'd like to talk about that seminar and just to share some photos from that day. So here we have no other than Dr. Dennis Tolkash, and apart from the one in Cairns, we were very pleased to have him here in the Philippines to actually speak, and the attendees meet him in the flesh. So it was a very good experience, and I believe that Dennis had a very good experience here in the Philippines as well. This one is Engineer Alec Mapalo, who represented the city mayor. This is Congressman Mark Go, and this is our very energetic MC for the day is none other than Dr. Lee Majors Fajilan from St. Louis University. These were our speakers on the day. Our keynote speaker was Director Deliera, and our panel speakers comprised of Venustan Alma Jimenez and the representative of Lucia Catanes, her daughter, Jamie Catanes. Now, just very briefly, I'd like to go over the discussions that we had on the day. And the keynote speaker, Director Deliera, has emphasized the role of governments in promoting and preserving culture while generating economic gains. Now, mind you, the topic was about adaptation and economic diversification. So we thought that Director Deliera was the perfect keynote speaker for the 5th workshop. She reminded us that these economic gains are for the communities, essentially because roads are made better, telephone communications, companies build towers in more rural areas. There are more petrol or gasoline stations in far-flung areas, and other services are now available in regional or remote areas. There's also this adaptation, this reminder to adapt to key themes, and that is to basically the unpredictable events and the changing tourist preferences. And this pretty much underpins what Dennis and my fellow speakers have been talking about since the beginning of this seminar series. Now that international travel, domestic and international travel nowadays is becoming more popular, we have to consider the tourist preferences, which have already evolved since 2019, just before the pandemic started. It was a good reminder from Director Deliera to consider culture and nature as one entity, that if we do promote and preserve our culture, we have to do the same thing for the natural environment. She also reminded us of that there is a value chain, and we have to consider this value chain from global to from local to global, and how we how communities can take pride in their local culture and be able to market them and promote them in international platforms. There's also this encouragement for women to be more, for governments to empower women, and again, this is to underpin what we have done in Indonesia with the leadership of our colleagues there, that women and youth should be empowered in this space, in the cultural tourism space. At the end of the day, this is also about capacity building. If we have to focus on adaptation and economic diversification, we have to lift up each other. If we are like in the 5th seminar, we had weavers, we had farmers who attended the face-to-face seminar. We had local government employees and regional employees. We had people from the media. And one of the themes that was that stuck with me was this collaboration and empowerment and capacity building. So I think in order for us to really achieve this, the goals that local governments have and even private businesses, is to work with each other, to build each other's capacity. There was also this, there was also this constant mention of cultural sensitivity as a very essential element to staying authentic. When we are sensitive, we were reminded if we are sensitive to other people's culture or our own culture, we tend to have a stronger sense of pride, and that we can encourage each other to stay authentic. And although this was one of the questions that was raised on the day, I think there can be more positive discussions and conversations around this as well, and be able to create more authentic cultural experiences for tourists. Let's not forget that this is a world of innovation. So leveraging on innovation and digitalization is equally important. That while we are trying to embrace our past and promote and preserve our local culture, we also have to stay abreast with the changing times. And if this has to include more training on digitalization and innovation, then that's what local communities have to do. Finally, there's this word buzz on upskilling and reskilling as an important equation of competitiveness for destinations. Once again, I just want to share some photos from the Q&A session, the discussion session. And some of the key questions that were raised here, this wasn't everything, but from memory and from a review of snippets from the videos, and from my notes, there were questions about conflicting presentation of culture, like wearing this kind of attire that I'm wearing. So apparently we're not supposed to call this a costume. Rather, I know this is semantics, but it's more appropriate to call this an attire rather than a costume, because mascots do wear costumes as well. There's also this discussion about stage authenticity of culture. What if it's staged, it's no longer authentic because some people remove or modify what is being presented. So I know that there's in the tourism literature has a lot of discussion around this one, but it's nice to explore this area on stage authenticity as well post-pandemic. The continuity of culture, according to the question and answer, according to the discussion, was that the importance of getting the youth involved in all these cultural activities, whether it's for tourism or otherwise, is crucial. Nowadays, young people from, say, here in the Cordilleras go to other places for studies, for employment, and they tend to neglect. That might be a strong word for some people, but there is a neglect of their own culture back home. Now, it's important for governments to be able, and the communities themselves, to be able to pull back those young people, teach them on how to farm, how to weave, how to propagate or continue their ancient culture as well. And last but not the least, there's this engagement, the need or the call for engagement of indigenous people and communities in cultural tourism. So it's not just the local governments, but it's those people, the communities at grassroots level that need to actively participate, and not just bystanders or passive observers, but active participants in cultural tourism. Now we're talking about recovery, then that's it, cultural tourism recovery. Again, some photos from the day. That's our speakers with plaques from the organizers. And then the workshop happened after lunch. So not everyone, those online weren't able to participate in this face-to-face workshop, but those who stayed, and I think we still had a very good number. In fact, from memory, I think we had about 7 tables with about at least 5 to 8 participants per table. And we grouped them. Just to give you a background on what we have done in the workshops, I facilitated it myself. The workshop was designed using principles from design thinking. So it's about these people grouped together, and we had two groups of weavers. We had a group of academics, we had a group of students, farmers, we had a group of local government employees, and a group of representatives from various non-government organizations. And the idea here was for them to think about the issues that they had as a unit, or as an organization, or as a sector, or as an industry. And with those issues, we wanted them to really focus on those issues, identify who the stakeholders were, and identify potential solutions. So we didn't really want to make it a whole design thinking exercise or process, because we had very limited time. But from the feedback, we received really good comments about about what they thought of the workshop and how they can use these things in their own industry. So that's us talking about what their expectations were of a workshop. And essentially, they wanted to learn about and gain knowledge, if not to share knowledge, about cultural tourism, what culture is, how recovery can be can take place, can manifest. And these are some images from the workshop as well. It was very dynamic, it was very interactive. We found that people share, or different sectors share the same issues, and that we found that collaboration is one of the keys to solving the problems that they identified. So just to give you an overview of, a snapshot of what these issues that they mentioned, it's basically a lack of a lot of things. So it's a lack of knowledge, a lack of involvement from the youth, from the local communities themselves. There's a lack of interest from the greater community. There's a lack of support from government, whether that's local, regional, or national. There's lack of information, lack of data-driven information specifically, and this was identified by none other than the academics. Having said that, the most common voice, or the most common solution that everyone had, was really collaboration. It's between stakeholders and between individuals or groups. The collaboration is important, and I believe that that is what we have achieved at the end of the workshop. People brought something to the table. They were able to network. They were able to build, to have conversations outside the workshop. And I believe that those conversations are continuing as we speak. I see that some of the people who were at the workshop are here in this virtual, in this webinar right now, and I'm very pleased that they are here. And I firmly believe that they will continue to practice what they have learned. They said that the best things about the seminar workshop 2 weeks ago was the knowledge sharing. And from this knowledge sharing, they were able to create networks. Day 2 was a tour of Winaka. And this is the Kapuyan family. That's Wilson Kapuyan who owns Winaka, and these are his grandchildren. Winaka is a perfect example of a really truly diversified destination or attraction. So it has nature, it has culture, it has experiential, it offers experiential learning for its visitors. So it's really a very good example of a truly diversified destination. Again, some of the photos. This is the production area of Narda. So this is where they weave. They put threads together. They weave and create their products. These are the weavers, the sewers, those on the production at Nardas, which is a very prominent brand from the Cordilleras, and is also being promoted overseas. So this is one of the things that the speakers were talking about. You know, we can talk about fashion and talk about culture, diversification, being part of that value chain from local to global. Some more photos from the tour. Yeah, these are giant bamboos. This is rattan, the fruit of the rattan, and rattan is what they use for weaving baskets. There's also this facilities where visitors can do the amazing race. So it's more of a natural / adventure type of tourism. And these are authentic houses from different parts of the Cordilleras. So a few days after the seminar, in the next issue, we were on paper again. We were on the paper again. We almost made it to the front page. As you can see, this is page 2. So these are the speakers, myself, Dennis, and Dr. Fahilan, who was our MC. Now, some of the takeaways that I have just extracted last night from our surveys, we found that there was the mean was over 3.5, at least for most of them. They were clear about the purpose and the intended outcomes. They found the seminar relevant to their work. It was a worthwhile experience for all of them. The time was well spent. For those who attended the seminar, the venue was suitable. Well, for the internet and audiovisual equipment didn't work well for our online attendees, but that's one of the challenges that we always navigate during hybrid events. Our attendees said that the diversification, women, and more opportunity on economic diversification and local adaptation of an economic diversification was one of the takeaways from an attendee from Indonesia, and that collaboration is the way to go. Facilitation of the workshop was good, and it's always relevant to cultural tourism. Now, some of them provided this feedback about what to do with their new learning, and they said they're planning to study deeper into gastronomy, heritage cuisine, and tourism, which I think is a product or say an effect of the workshop. And someone from Bontoc Mountain Province said that they can apply this in policy making as well.
Sorry, Jenny, I think we need to move on.
That's fine. I will. I'm happy for you to share this later on, but this is a testimonial from Elizabeth Farnican, who has attended our seminar from workshop 1, and I believe she's still here today. So thank you very much, Elizabeth, for being here. You and your colleague Ivy and your other colleagues from Bontoc, we're very pleased to have you always in our seminar, and we hope to continue working with you beyond this project. It's a very long testimonial, and I'm happy to share these slides with you at a later time. Now, moving forward, we from conversations, we just thought that it's important for us to create an Australian-ASEAN network focused on cultural tourism, to redefine or contextualize culture and resolve conflicts on how culture is presented, to encourage entrepreneurship and have local, regional, and international collaborations, and work together to create data-driven initiatives. So once again, to our event partner, St. Louis University, Winaka, and the University of Cordilleras, maraming salamat po. You're muted, Dennis.
Thank you, Jenny. It was a very comprehensive review of the 5th workshop. Let me share the screen back again. Okay. And so the final part of today's seminar is to look at the way forward. And here we actually would like you, our participants, to contribute. So you can type in the chat any suggestions you have, or any recommendations for the future collaborations. So please write that down in the chat. And in the meantime, we still have some work to do. We have been generating some resources and publishing them online. These include the Facebook page that you're more than welcome to have a look at. There are recordings of the previous seminars posted there. The seminars are also posted on our YouTube channel. So it's YouTube /@cultural tourism recovery. Not too difficult to remember. And we are working on putting all the resources together on a website. So the website will have the web recordings from YouTube, and the PowerPoint slides from those speakers that approve us to upload their presentations. And also, of course, some background information. All right, so we will also do more content analysis of what has occurred in the seminars, whether we have discussed the projects that have been mentioned, or the partners that we have identified, and see if there are more specific projects we can take in the future, maybe more applied projects. And one of the initial ideas was on establishing a network between our participants, and this is something we need to further discuss, how we can maybe formalize it, in what form it can take, so that we keep in touch together between different organizations located in different regions, different countries. So if you have any suggestions, please write it in the chat. We also focus on publications, academic and industry publications that can come out of this seminar series. As you notice, there have been a lot of different discussions, a lot of topics have been raised, so I think it would be interesting for the external readers to also understand what are the current discussions and current trends in cultural tourism in Southeast Asia. The email address that we've been using to contact you will be still active. So for any inquiries, any suggestions, any comments, any feedback, you can contact us on culturaltourism@jcu.edu.au. Okay, so we can open the floor for further discussion. Oh, here's an interesting idea to create a WhatsApp group for the participants. Yeah, that's an interesting channel for communication.
Hey, Dennis.
Yes, Hera.
I say something. Actually, I talked to some of my colleagues in Indonesia, and they are actually very interested to pursue like collaboration in terms of the academic collaboration or publication, research collaboration. And in Indonesia, we have a lot of potential for developing the research on cultural tourism and heritage. And even at that time, I talked to my colleagues, they come up with actually quite a great idea about cultural tourism. However, they're not really sure how to build the collaboration. It's supposed to be like between like the university to university, or it can be just done within like the department or this faculty, or maybe within our community here, the cultural tourism recovery community, who are working in this project. So yeah, I'm not sure the answer to that, but I know that there are a lot of ideas coming in from my colleagues in Indonesia, because we have a WhatsApp group for the Indonesian tourism scholars. And I participated in all the WhatsApp groups, and then that's where I actually know and then learn from my colleagues about the ideas and also opportunities. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Hera. So I think it depends on what we try to do, because we don't need any formal partnership if we just work on a project together as individuals, like how we do research is, colleagues to colleagues. So it really depends on what the scopes are, and whether there is a need for any formal partnership or more informal, like a network. Okay. There is a comment online from Mary. Thank you for the opportunity to learn. I had been remiss with the other sessions. Understandable, no problem. Thank you for joining us. Nevertheless, I am interested in the cultural tourism project since I am one of a group that researched and produced folk tales in our area, including vanishing languages. My suggestion for cultural tourism is to record more folk tales, especially vanishing cultures. Yeah, that's a very good point and a good project. When we had the CANS workshop, but that was also one of the things that Jabalbina Aboriginal Corporation is working on, is to record and create an online archive of the cultural heritage of their tales and other aspects of culture. So yeah, that's very important to record the culture before some of it may be vanishing. Hopefully not, but it happen. Okay, any other comments?
Hello, Dennis.
Yes.
I'm Sidi from Bali. Just a short comment or question. Yeah. As you mentioned before, that can you tell about what the theme the country choose? Yeah, during the cultural tourism recovery, like during the G20 meeting. Yeah, the Indonesian mentioned about the tourism stronger and better. Yeah. So how about in Philippines or Malaysia and in your country? Yeah? That's the first one. Number two, that I understand from the presentation of the speaker that the role of government and or association are very dominant. Yeah, looks very dominant. How do you see this situation? Then the sound from the community in the tourism destination or tourism area. Yeah. And number third, I just read about the report of the UNWTO about the tourism village. Yeah, they have a new rules on. They mention about the 9 or 12 points. Yeah, that to take account in evaluate the tourism industry. Yeah, the tourism industry or in the community tourism. Yeah, at the moment. Yeah, during the recovery. Did you make a specific evaluation on what going on with the cultural tourism recovery? That's the three that I want to share with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for very interesting 3 questions. I think we'll start with the first one, and I think Hassanal and Jenny can talk about the tourism in their countries. So who wants to start, Hassanal or Jenny?
Let Jenny go first.
Yeah, thank you for your questions, sir. Can you please repeat the first one?
About the team, yeah, team or idea in your country, yeah, what your government or what the association tell about the team of the situation. Like the G20 meeting, yeah, they have a very good a team, like make the tourism stronger and better. Yeah, how about in your country? Thank you.
Okay, yes. Well, the Philippines right now is still, it's more fun in the Philippines, and it pretty much encapsulates different experiences and diverse experiences, and that whatever you do in the Philippines is more fun. But here in the Cordilleras, where I currently am, they relaunched the program Find Yourself in the Cordilleras. And here in Baguio, we just wrapped up the Ibagyo Festival, which is about creativity. So it encompasses culture, art, and dancing, singing, weaving, sculpting, wood carving, etc. So there is a diversity of activities, arts, and crafts that are being promoted as part of the culture and heritage of the region. Now, what the government's role, and I think that's your second question. Here in the Philippines, the national government has the Philippine Trade Training Center, which leads or spearheads the training provided to local communities. So the training is really about reskilling, upskilling, teaching local folks on how to do accounting, on how to use computer, on how to use softwares and different applications for their operation and businesses. So it's for individuals, it's also for private businesses and local governments. So there is a range of initiatives in the Philippines right now that supports local communities and the promotion and preservation of culture and heritage. I hope I answered your question.
All right, for Malaysia as well. Malaysia, basically the theme has been there for a long time, is Malaysia truly Asia. But then again, Malaysia essentially is a federation. It's an entity of the Malay states, the Sabah and Sarawak. So we are in Sabah actually, but in Sabah, well, Malaysia was, they choose really, it's a very, very good theme, Malaysia truly Asia, because we have in the Peninsula Malaysia, they have like this really distinctive culture of Malay, Chinese, and Indians, and Aborigines, and also they call it Bumiputra, right? But in Sabah, it's all Bumiputras, so we don't really have that Malay, Chinese, Indian so much, So that's why in Sabah is much more focused on our icons, which is the Mount Kinabalu, which is the proboscis monkey, Rafflesia flowers, and also a very big push onto rural tourism in since the last 5 years from the Sabah Tourism Board. So that's the first questions. And for the second questions, basically, so because we basically have our state government, and also we have a federal government. The federal government is more really for licensing and also support towards the businesses, also destinations as well. And the state government is really for the support of the state government as well. And in a way that in terms of marketing, I think the state government is much more focused and much more better in delivering their work, their promises, or their deliveries to the local players compared to the federal ones, because federal ones they have to take care of 13 states, but the states one is just focused on really the players. So I think that's the second question. Thank you.
And in Australia, they just launched a new marketing campaign, Come Say Good Day. It's launched with a small film of 9 minutes about a story of a kangaroo from a souvenir shop. So their focus is basically on the most familiar things about Australia. They want to remind what Australia is about to international markets. The short film has quite a significant portion related to the Aboriginal Australians, especially in the Northern Territory. I think it's the first time where an indigenous language is spoken in a commercial in Australia. Yeah, so as I mentioned, with our state government last year, they said it was year of indigenous tourism. This year, they also focus on accessible tourism. Making sure that tourism experiences are accessible to people with disabilities. And so they provide these different streams of funding to promote such products and further develop them. In terms of the role of government, because it's positive that there is a support from the government. I think traditionally, often tourism, especially in like federal level of government, didn't play a big role in many countries. The focus was more on like resources, manufacturing, and so forth. So it's good to be noticed to see the significance of tourism from the government perspective. On the other hand, at times this may create some dependencies instead of creating a economically viable and sustainable business. Organizations focus on winning grants, and it can make people more reliant on government funding rather than on their own entrepreneurial skills. And that is a danger, because in the end, you want to have a product that is of good quality, that addresses a market, and the market shouldn't be the government funding. The market are the tourists. And so at times it may be a challenge, but I think especially in this case, when we're just coming out of COVID, there is a need for the support from the government, because many organizations, even if they were doing very well before COVID, they need support still. But hopefully it will change in the future. In relationship to the UNWTO evaluation criteria, I think they're just trying to ensure that the standards are good. Like they always push for higher standards from tourism. For example, they run these tourism villages competition to demonstrate what a good example of a tourism village would look like. And so we haven't really looked in depth into what is the evaluation criteria from UNWTO, but yeah, I think in the first seminar we mentioned it, but it wasn't like an integral part of these workshops. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dennis, there are further comments in the chat.
Do you want to read them?
Okay. All right. So there's one from Elizabeth Farnigan. She said, we have a national cultural treasure, the Ala petroglyph and the Ganga burial caves. However, we have proposed several preservation and protection projects, but was not funded by the national government. The local government cannot fund it. Can you suggest a private company that can help us? There really is an urgency for the protection, because the first burial cave, there are no more mummies, only coffins with incomplete bones. And just to give you a background, in this part of the world, they used to mummify their dead. So that's why Elizabeth was mentioned about these burial sites. So they're heritage sites, but they're not preserved. And there's also one from Javier, who's also in Cairns. Congratulations on the project developed for all authors, as you introduce a very timeline topic for COVID-19 tourism impact and full networking opportunities. A classification of collected data regarding attendees' expectations of tourism recovery actions' impact on community well-being could add value and helpful information for scientific reasoning. Sadly, I could attend both last workshop seminars only. That's okay, Javier.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you for the suggestion on what to have a look at, Javier. With regards to Elizabeth's comment, Jenny, do you know any philanthropists around? I think it's really like a philanthropy question.
Yes, I do not know anyone at the moment, but this is something that can be explored by the local government. And also, again, as a result of the previous workshop, it can be the networking and the capacity building and all the conversations beyond this project. Maybe we will be able to explore possibilities. So stay in touch, Elizabeth.
Okay, are there any other comments, questions?
May I just add, Dennis, if there are those who are here today, if they are those who can identify organizations or individuals that can help support these burial sites, that would be appreciated as well. Stay in touch with Elizabeth. Maybe Elizabeth, if you can add your email here so people can contact you, that would be fantastic.
Okay. So two other key points for this seminar is the evaluation of the seminar. Can someone post the link for the evaluation and to obtain certificates? Okay, so after we finish, please complete the evaluation, and you can obtain a certificate of attendance. Oh yes, so that's a good topic, Marie. Security of land tenure of cultural groups. That's a huge topic, and it's very difficult to address, right? So as in many Southeast Asian and also in the Pacific countries, a lot of land is communal land. There is no registration on the land. You need to prove that it's your land, right? And then it becomes quite complicated who land belongs to, who has the opportunity to develop something on the land, and if it's developed, who that belongs to. When development is happening, there is also a challenge from the state that may be willing to develop something on the land, maybe a new suburb or new town or transport infrastructure. And then again, there is a need to discuss how to protect that land, how to ensure the plants do not affect any significant heritage or communities. Yeah, so it's something I have been looking at in the Pacific Islands context, because yeah, it is a challenge, and in some cases, like in Cook Islands, where there's quite a small island, distant relatives did not really worry about who land belongs to until tourists started to come in, and then it becomes a very difficult family situation where they need to argue who has the right to build like a homestay accommodation on the land. So yeah, that's a very good topic. Okay. Anything else? Well, if there are no other thoughts, comments, and so forth, then I think we can conclude this seminar. And thank you all for attending today, attending multiple seminars in the series. It has been a great adventure for us, for our cultural tourism recovery team. And it has been a great opportunity to meet people, to hear what are the current themes and what are the current discussions in the region. And we learned a lot from our participants. It has been a really great opportunity to share thoughts and ideas and learn from each other. So thanks to all the participants from this seminar and from all the different seminars. And we hope to keep in touch and work together on further initiatives. So thank you.
I hope I also have a chance for the next seminar, yeah, Dennis. Please invite us again. Thank you very much. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Sidi.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dennis, Jenny, Hera.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah,
Thank
thank you, Dennis, Hasanal, Jenny.
Thanks, Hera. Thanks,
Yeah,
Javier. Thanks for supporting us.
and look forward to hearing from the participants about great ideas.
Please complete the post-event survey too.